The beginning of the film is a dark scene in pouring rain, a family moving in a truck without anyone saying a word. Mr. Im's family was moving from Seoul to the small village of Mugi, but when they arrived in town, they saw an omen. It was dark and pouring rain. Suddenly the truck had a punctured tire, so my parents got out to check the situation, but on the highway there was no one around. Suddenly, two motorbikes passed by and turned back. Seeing the silhouettes of four tall, dark men wearing black raincoats approaching, the father immediately asked the mother to get on the car first, but actually those four people were just four students who kindly called an ambulance to help Mr. Im's family. Before leaving, all four were attracted by the stunning beauty of Sang Mi's daughter sitting in the car. At a certain church, the priest is preaching about religious doctrines to his congregation. Particularly, the spectacle of performing an exorcism, extracting a tumor from the abdomen of a man diagnosed with late-stage cancer by major hospitals, further elevates the reverence of his followers. Do you see the problem here? Mr. Im's family has been towed away by the rescue vehicle. No one in the car speaks a word. After getting the car fixed, they arrive at the house that an acquaintance had brokered for them, only to find it in ruins. With nowhere else to go, they head to a sauna. Mr. Im tries to call that friend again, only to find out that he had been swindled out of all his money for gambling. Coincidentally, the four high school boys also come to the sauna for a bath and meet the girl from Seoul who intended to follow them but lost track due to her clumsiness. On the same night, two policemen receive a report about a drunken man causing a disturbance at a bus stop. When the police arrive to intervene, the man even urinates on the roof of the car. On their way back, the balding policeman encounters his son and his friends. He instructs them to study diligently and not forget to flatter the son of the governor. Then, the two policemen take the drunken men to a shelter, which is essentially a disguised church. This place helps the police manage the wandering people and provides them with accommodation. Therefore, the policemen are quite fond of this arrangement. The next morning, Mr. Im goes around looking for work. An old man hires him to work on his farm and provides accommodation for his family as well. The room they're given is old, dilapidated, and filthy, requiring cleaning. After Sang Mi boosts the family's spirits, everyone pitches in to transport and tidy up the room. Once done, the family sits down to have a meal together, and Sang Mi skillfully helps create a more cheerful atmosphere. However, the scene of this happy family is spotted by the priest, who perhaps has some sinister plans for this family. Meanwhile, the group of four high school boys is seeking revenge on a fellow student by spray painting his motorcycle and then running away. After settling the score, they all go to watch a bullfight. Upon leaving, they come across a group of delinquent students. Among them is the one whose motorcycle was sprayed earlier, so both groups engage in a fight. Despite being outnumbered, the four boys opt to fight smart, but the gang manages to block their path. Just when they thought they would be beaten badly, the leader of the gang steps forward and orders a retreat, leaving the four boys red-faced and embarrassed. At this moment, the drunken man regains consciousness and is taken to wash up by a curly-haired guy with a mocking expression. However, not understanding the situation, the drunken man resists, prompting the curly-haired guy to angrily hit him repeatedly with the showerhead, causing him to bleed. It's only then that the drunken man starts to listen. After washing up, the drunken man is taken to meet the priest. He quickly kneels down, begging the priest to save him because the curly-haired guy wants to kill him. The priest helps him up and invites him to have tea, but the drunken man throws the teacup at the priest's face. However, the priest's composed demeanor and some words of wisdom make the drunken man repent tearfully and become a devout follower. 1 in 4 high school youth is Dong Chun. He had an alcoholic father who always scolded him and said he should not have been born. However, he has a grandmother who always loves and pampers him to the fullest. Another male student is Song Hwa, the son of a wealthy family whose father is in the gubernatorial campaign and whose mother is paralyzed in the hospital. Today the stable owner came to tell Mr. Im that the shelter had noticed his family's difficulties, so they wanted to help and asked Mr. Im to bring his family to the shelter. After getting to know Mr. Im's family and knowing that Sang Jin and Sang Mi were twins, the priest said he would help them get a better place to live and let them go to school. The priest said that he considers his neighbors as relatives and helping those in need is a mission that God has taught him. Mr. Im is very grateful for the hospitality of the parish priest and the people here. But on the car ride home, Sang Mi seemed to be the only one who felt there was a problem here when she thought back to the priest's sexual harassment when he placed his hand darkly on her thigh. Sang Jin's brother, mother and father all felt there was no problem. Furthermore, they also want to move to a new, more spacious house. On the way home, Mr. Im faced two motorbikes in the opposite direction that were driving like crazy with no signs of stopping. But fortunately, when a collision was about to occur, the two cars separated. The motorbike driver is none other than Dong Chun and Song Hwa. Even if the main character is in this situation, he should curse, play stupid and bother others. After being scared by two angry young men, Sang Mi felt uncomfortable and left the car. She said she didn't trust the people at that church. the fattest guy in a group of 4 high school youths whose only relative is his brother, and the dwarf has the most normal family when he has normal parents. But with his passion to become a streamer, he often earns money to pay off debts by playing equally stupidly as his teammates, so he often gets ganked by his mother. The next morning, Kong and the curly-haired man took Mr. Im's family to their new house. This house was donated to a charity by a parishioner. After cleaning the house fairly well, Ms. Kong and the curly-haired guy said they had to go do something and asked the twins to distribute leaflets for them. After playing for a while, Sang Jin went to the bathroom. Here he bumped into a thug. Seeing the newcomer, the thug and his accomplices immediately abused Sang Jin. It must be said that these people are too deceitful and corrupt. After being suppressed and released by the gang, Sang Jin walked out with a blank face, making Sang Mi worry that something had happened to her brother. On the way home, Sang Jin asked his sister not to tell her parents. After all, they had a lot to worry about, so she didn't tell her parents. The next day they both went to school to enroll. Sang Mi was in the same class as Dong Chun and Song Hwa, while Sang Jin was in the same class as the thugs who humiliated him yesterday. Seeing that Sang Jin was gentle, they started to make things difficult for him. During lunchtime, the thug even spit on his rice and forced him to eat it. Seeing Sang Jin hesitate, the ill-mannered guy threw him away and forced Sang Jin to face down and eat on the ground. When Sang Jin was about to open his mouth to eat, Sang Mi threw the bag of milk at the back of the thug's neck and asked him to apologize to his brother. But there's no way he can stand it. When they were about to attack Sang Mi, Dong Chun and Song Hwa stepped in to fight them. After class ended, the two brothers slowly walked home and saw a guy with curly hair waiting for them. He asked him to pass by so he could pick up the two brothers to the aid hospital because Ms. Kong said she had a gift for the family. When Sang Mi saw the excessively large gift, she didn't dare to accept it, but under Aunt Kang's persuasion, she finally agreed. Meanwhile, Sang Jin was crying in the prayer room about the incidents at school. Suddenly, the priest stepped in and stuffed the boy's head with ideas of salvation, then handed Sang Jin a book about the call for heaven. As she waited and didn't see her brother coming out, she turned back inside to find him. Walking through the dark places, she was about to leave when the curly-haired guy pulled her back. He claimed the cries were from someone praying and lamenting their heart, and then said that Sang Jin was already outside. During the meal, their mother asked both of them about the situation at school, but to prevent their parents from worrying, the two only said that everything was normal. After the meal, Sang Jin immersed himself in the messages from the book given by the priest. The next morning, before Song Hwa went to school, her father straightened his tie and reminded her to study diligently and avoid trouble, as he was in the midst of a gubernatorial campaign. After the school day ended and her brother didn't return, Sang Mi went to find him and overheard other students discussing her brother being bullied by the gang. She hurried over and met Dong Chun and Song Hwa just finishing their guard duty. She asked the two to help rescue her brother, but Song Hwa, following her father's advice, coldly refused, surprising Dong Chun and causing them to argue. At the same time, Sang Mi ran up to the rooftop alone. The thugs were undressing Sang Jin. If he didn't comply, they would show Sang Min his past video. To save her brother, Sang Mi was ready to do anything. Just then, Dong Chun appeared and fought the gang. Sang Min was teasing with the little one in the gang. Left alone, Sang Jin felt helpless, standing on the wall without any notice. The scene made the group stop. Seeing it, Song Hwa quickly ran to the rooftop. At that moment, Sang Jin was also helpless. He only thought of the path to paradise, so he leaned and fell. When Song Hwa ran up, it was too late. Sang Mi cried silently when she couldn't stop her brother. Sang Jin was taken to the hospital, and their parents, upon receiving the bad news, hurried there. The thugs and Dong Chun were taken to the police station. The congregation at the shelter is still absent-mindedly dancing to save lost souls. What a nonsense game that only fools the elderly. While waiting at the bench, Mrs. Im imagined her son calling her, so she ran to the terrace with her son. Sang Mi and her father couldn't find her mother and hurriedly went looking for her. When he saw his wife about to fall, Mr. Im took the opportunity to hug his wife and pull her down. At this time, Sang Jin's heartbeat also stopped beating. The whole family held Sang Jin's funeral because he was new, so not many people came to visit. At this time, the people at the sponsoring house came together to talk about reason. The whole group did not forget to act out crying ostriches after the priest's name. Seeing the group of people constantly mentioning the way to escape from heaven made Sang Mi suspicious about what this priest was doing related to her brother's foolish decision. After her son's death, Im was no longer conscious and constantly scolded her daughter for being the reason why Sang Jin was like that. But just a moment later she quickly came to her senses and apologized for what she said to Sang Mi. Song Hwa also came to the funeral and met Sang Mi. She asked why he approached her. Because the two were in the same class, Song Hwa took the initiative to get to know her during gym class. Everyone had a group but Sang Mi was alone, so Song Hwa invited her to join the group. I thought I would show off my charm in front of girls, but Sang Mi hit me with a volleyball and couldn't block a single ball. After class, he even brought her water, but she refused, saying that the person who was hit by the ball more needed to drink water. After all, it's just pity. Sang Mi chased him away and said not to appear in front of her again. At the police station, because the thugs' parents were influential, the police couldn't do anything but kowtow to the wealthy and release the gang. However, they inexplicably detained Dong Chun, which greatly angered Songhua. After the emotional funeral for Sang Mi's older brother, she sobbed and ran to the cliff, intending to follow her brother, but the curly-haired guy pulled her back. He continuously touched Sang Mi, making her feel extremely repulsed. The next day, Dong Chun was released, but the school, not wanting to be involved, expelled him. Helpless, Dong Chun had to go home. Songhua ran after him and asked why he did that, but Dong Chun said, "Because your dad has power, and my dad is just an alcoholic, so no matter what I say, they won't believe me." Dong Chun was sitting at the usual bar drinking beer with the chubby guy and the short one. When he went out for the restroom, the chubby guy followed him. Dong Chun finished first and went outside to smoke, where he encountered the gang laughing without any remorse, even though they had just caused someone to meet their demise. Dong Chun followed them, and coincidentally, the chubby guy, sensing trouble, went in to call the short one to go with them, but they hadn't paid yet, so the owner didn't let them leave. At that moment, Songhua also arrived at the bar, hearing the news, and all three ran like crazy to find Dong Chun. Because the thugs still showed no remorse and even said Sang Jin deserved it, Dong Chun angrily rushed in and repeatedly punched the thug in the face. Because the thug was bleeding from Dong Chun's punches, he pretended to apologize and take the blame for everything. Not only that, he agreed to go to the police station with Dong Chun to confess, but unexpectedly, he turned against him. Taking advantage of Dong Chun's unpreparedness, he grabbed an umbrella and stabbed Dong Chun in the chest. Songhua promptly appeared, rushed over, and hit that rascal on the head, but he still wouldn't give up. As a result, both Dong Chun and the thug fell, hitting a rock. After being admitted to the hospital, the doctor saved him from the critical condition, but he would never walk again due to the aftermath. The man's father yelled, demanding a transfer to another hospital, but it was in vain. Knowing that his son was present at the crime scene, not only that, the father of the paralyzed guy was an important factor in winning the election, so he took Songhua to meet with the police in charge of the case. He used his influence and position as the police chief to lure the officers. To secure this position, the police had to turn a blind eye to Songhua's presence at the crime scene, even though the CCTV had captured everything that happened at that time. The curly-haired guy seems to be showing off to the priest. The actions at the shelter are still very shady. Songhua said he would be a witness, but the policeman, after taking the bribe, sent him back on the grounds that his testimony was not objective because he was Dong Chun's friend. The next morning, Ms. Kong, the curly-haired guy and the mute guy went to Mr. Im's house to pray and comfort the family. Ms. Kong asked everyone to pray together every day and sprinkle in Mr. Im's head the ways to escape and the path of salvation, then everything was prepared by God. After all, Songhua went to ask his father for help, but he said that because he was running for election, he didn't want to get involved in such things. Wait until after he is elected, he will definitely bring Dong Chun out. Mr. Im returned to work and accidentally learned that the thugs who harmed his son had been released by the police and went to school normally. While his son died in frustration and his family was torn apart, those bastards still lived normally and happily went to karaoke. Mr. Im was angry and picked up a hammer to take revenge. Before going to court, the fat guy and the short guy visited Dong Chun and comforted him, saying that Songhua would testify and he would be released. Mr. Im was beaten to death by thugs. They only stopped when they thought Mr. Im was about to die, so they quickly ran away. Mr. Im wandered the streets and fainted when he met Songhua on his way to court. Because of that, he took Mr. Im to the hospital, so he couldn't come to court to testify. Dong Chun's case is over and he is being returned to prison. Songhua chased after and stopped the car transporting the prisoners. He kept calling Dong Chun's name and apologizing to him, but Dong Chun didn't even look at him once. Mr. Im took his wife to the hospital for examination. Because Ms. Im was no longer mentally alert, the doctor ordered Ms. Im to be admitted to the hospital for treatment. But Mr. Im did not agree and took her home because he thought the doctor would send his wife to a mental hospital. He sought another treatment by taking Mrs. Im to see a fortune teller for an exorcism. This teacher did some spirit possession tricks and pretended to be Sang Jin to talk to the family, but after the ceremony, Mrs. Im's spirit was still no better but even darker. The fortune teller lied that Mrs. Im was possessed by an extremely mischievous demon and that it would be difficult to expel it, so he would wait a while to talk to the superiors to arrange another exorcism. Before leaving, the fortune teller asked for more money even though Mr. Im had paid in advance. Because he ran out of money, Mr. Im had to sell the family truck to get money to take his wife for treatment. In prison, Dong Chun is being beaten by thugs. They said they were given some pocket money to beat him to disability. Hearing this, Dong Chun angrily pushed them away and fought back against those bastards. Songhua's father was also successfully elected for the third consecutive time. Today, Ms. Kong brought food to comfort Mr. Im. Before eating, she added some nonsense water that the people at the shelter kept saying was holy water, water taken from saved creatures grown by the priest himself. People take it every day because they believe that the holy water will help them cure illness and suffering and all. When he was exhausted from work, Mr. Im was about to drink water when he remembered Ms. Kang's bottle of holy water. He thought for a moment, then poured holy water into the water bottle bottle and drank. Looking at the spider web in the shape of a cross, he thought that this was what God had prepared for his family. It's true that Ms. Kang's brainwashing has worked. Sang Mi went back to school and learned that Dong Chun had been expelled, so she went to the pub of the group of 4 young men to ask Song Hwa for Dong Chun's phone number. Here she also learned that he had been sent to a youth re-education camp. Song Hwa said that it was all his fault that his friend fell into that situation. Sang Mi returned home, and at this moment, her parents were urging her to get ready to go to the shelter because Mr. Im believed that the place would help their family find salvation, as it was the will of God. However, her mother was only thinking about meeting her deceased son again. Feeling utterly powerless, Sang Mi had to go to the shelter with her parents. Now she couldn't persuade her father anymore, as he had become obsessed with the words that Aunt Kong always preached. Upon arriving, the Red Cross made Sang Mi feel horrified, along with the eerie chants of the disabled boy. Time passed, and 3 years later, Song Hwa had become a law school student. Despite being diligent and excellent in her studies, it seemed that Song Hwa had grown more mature and lived a more closed-off life than before. On that day, Song Hwa was forced to attend some club party. Here, she witnessed the old ghosts bullying the new ones. Just because the freshman didn't drink, the senior spat at him and forced him to drink. Thinking back to what had happened to Sang Jin, Song Hwa couldn't stay silent and stood up to defend the freshman. A scuffle ensued, but with her experience in fighting during high school, Song Hwa wasn't at all disadvantaged. The next morning, Song Hwa returned to Muji to enjoy a short summer vacation. As soon as she arrived in town, she was seen by some gossiping girls and leering boys. Sang Mi was still working hard at the shelter. She noticed the disabled boy sitting and eating, but when she went out, she couldn't find him, so she ran after him to look for him. The disabled boy, who loved drinking soda, was wandering when he heard someone screaming. He followed the sound and filmed the scene where the curly-haired guy was assaulting a girl in a small tent. After being discovered, the curly-haired guy continuously beat the disabled boy. Following the cries, Sang Mi also found her way to the scene and rescued the boy before he was fatally injured. The curly-haired guy lied, claiming that he was punishing the boy for stealing money, but Sang Mi didn't believe him. He threatened her to keep the incidents at the shelter a secret. After taking the disabled boy back to the room, Sang Mi discovered bruises on his body. She wanted to take him to the hospital, but the people there insisted that he just had a cold and that drinking holy water and praying would heal him. Seeing the increasingly deranged behavior of the people there, Sang Mi shouted out, and her father slapped her. The priest stepped in and agreed to let Sang Mi take the boy to the hospital for a checkup. However, at the hospital, the doctor quickly gave them a superficial examination and sent them back. The boy also mentioned that he remembered the lady because the curly-haired guy had threatened him, so he didn't dare to defy him. On the way back, when the car stopped for gas, Curly went to the restroom, so the naive boy spoke the whole truth and even showed Sang Mi the video he had captured, which frightened her, holding onto her phone tightly. Curly had been watching her from the car door for some time. On the way back, he turned onto a different path. Sensing trouble, Sang Mi picked up the screwdriver from under the car and reminded the boy to hold on tightly. Sang Mi rammed into the mute chubby guy's hand, causing him to lose control, and then rammed into Curly's hand. In the chaotic situation, the car plunged straight down the cliff. The car fell into the ravine, fortunately not too deep, and being seated at the back, Sang Mi was less affected. She quickly regained consciousness and led the boy away. Curly and the chubby guy had also regained consciousness. The chubby guy was very angry and wanted to punish Sang Mi, but Curly stopped him by hitting him repeatedly and threatening that they should listen to him and the priest, or they would taste suffering. After regaining their composure, they prepared to chase the two. After a while, the boy was too tired and in pain to continue, so Sang Mi had to hide him in a corner and ran to seek help. When Sang Mi returned, the two scoundrels had caught the boy. She couldn't leave, afraid of what they might do to the boy. Curly approached Sang Mi, pulled her hair, and hit her. After capturing the two, Curly snatched the phone to delete the video the boy had captured of his heinous act. Unable to bear watching Sang Mi being beaten, the boy ran over. Despite Sang Mi's attempts to stop him, he continued without realizing that the train was approaching. Finally, the boy left right in front of Sang Mi, making her scream in anger and despair. Upon returning to the shelter, Sang Mi wanted to tell the whole truth, but her father believed that his daughter was being manipulated and possessed by demons, explaining the incident as such. Others also believed that an evil force was involved, causing the car to overturn and the accident to occur. The naive boy was seen as a victim of being inadvertently hit by a train while he was using the restroom. No one believed Sang Mi's words. Everyone thought that spiritual forces were at play. When she reached the boy's room, she couldn't contain her emotions. Overwhelmed with helplessness, she was in pain and wept bitterly. Curly went to the priest's room, questioning why the priest still stubbornly supported Sang Mi, a stubborn and difficult girl. Seeing Curly daring to confront him, the priest grabbed his hair and made him aware of his position, that is, kneeling at his feet. Sang Mi's mother seemed to have succumbed to madness. She was given some strange medication daily at the rescue center. Song Hwa's father continued to build a relationship with the corrupt police officer. Today, the chairman assigned the police officer an extremely important task. Curly began to weave a story about the accident. He claimed that he had seen the Savior reaching out to save those involved in the accident, ensuring their survival. Upon hearing this, the congregation began to shout prayers and worship. Sang-mi's father prayed, believing that doing so would free his daughter's soul from the demon's grasp. He hoped that God would redeem Sang-mi's soul. The priest came to console the naive boy's grandmother. He claimed that he had seen the boy with the Lord, playing happily with him. Upon hearing this, the old woman's sorrow eased, and she felt comforted, believing that her grandson had ascended to heaven. When Song-hwa went to the shelter to take care of her mother, she saw her father and the secretary affectionately laughing and entering the building. Over the years, she had come to realize that her father had deceived her. Despite his election victory, her mother remained in the hospital, and he had not freed Dong-chun. Confronted with her son's reproach, her father merely brushed off the accusations. Disappointed, Song-hwa left. Dong-chun had his hair cut and prepared everything to start a new life because today was the day he would be released from prison. Dong-chun went to the black bean sauce noodle shop, a dish that his late grandmother loved. Overwhelmed with helplessness, he ate and wept. To help Sang-mi recover from the shock of the naive boy's death, the priest arranged for her to go outside for a while. Sang-mi was happy, thinking that she could take her mother outside as well, but her mother was now completely obsessed with the divine at the shelter. She believed that Sang-jin, her son, was still there and that it was heaven. The people all cheered together. Ko-kong suggested that Mrs. Im stay at the shelter, where Sang-mi could visit and take care of her every day. On the way, Sang-mi asked to stop for her to use the restroom. They entered a restaurant and asked the owner for help, who also recognized Kong and warmly welcomed them. Sang-mi burst into tears when she recalled the insane events at the shelter and decided to escape. Kong noticed Sang-mi's absence and immediately informed everyone to chase after her. At that moment, Sang-mi encountered a police car, and they received a report about a missing person from the shelter. Hearing this, Sang-mi became terrified and demanded to get off the car, but when the car stopped, the shelter staff arrived. Sang-mi was unaware that they all shared the same secret and were tearfully discussing the heinous murder committed by the curly-haired man and the insane occurrences at the shelter. She believed they were all demons in human disguise, but the police insisted she had a mental illness. Sang-mi tried to awaken her father, but he continued to believe that she was possessed, laying his hands on her head to perform a ritual. He repeatedly hit her head to drive the demon out of her, until she passed out, at which point everyone stopped. As the shelter staff were returning, they accidentally collided with Song-hwa's car. Feeling responsible, the curly-haired man got out of the car, apologized, and offered compensation. After everything was settled, Song-hwa turned to leave, but caught Sang-mi's pleading gaze. The mistake from 3 years ago still troubled Song-hwa's heart, so this time he decided to act. The three of them immediately chased after the shelter's car. The short man remained passionate about filming, hoping to become famous and earn a bonus from fans. Sang-mi realized that Song-hwa was following them, knowing that he was her only hope. She glanced back at everyone in the car, and when no one was paying attention, she intended to jump out, but was pulled back by Kong. Song-hwa chased them to a hill, but his car suddenly ran out of gas, forcing them to give up. The shelter's car took Sang-mi back home, and before leaving, Kong issued threatening remarks, warning her to behave herself as her mother was still at the shelter. After they left, Sang-mi disclosed the truth about the simple boy's death to her father and pleaded for him to come to his senses, but Mr. Im still believed that his daughter was possessed, which led to his actions. He locked the door and confined Sang-mi to her room, placing a cross in front of her door. Song-hwa went to the shelter and spoke with the paralyzed mother. For years, he had been exhausted thinking about the past. He pleaded with his mother to protect him and help him become stronger. Dong-chul was introduced to work part-time at a bar. Due to his gangster background, the bar owner liked Dong-chul's personality and hired him. After being released from prison, the playboy sought out his old friend for revenge. Trusting his friend, he had confessed to a murder to cover for him, but his friend, instead of keeping his promise to help him get out, had pushed him into prison, causing him to serve a 9-year sentence. The friend's true nature was also revealed, as he sent his henchmen to take out the playboy. The situation turned into a 1 against 100 fight. The playboy didn't hold back and dove into the brawl with the henchmen. It seemed that he had let out all the resentment he had been carrying for 9 years of wrongful imprisonment, and now he was ready for a fight. However, his strength was limited, and he seemed to be at a disadvantage. Suddenly, Dong-chul stood beside him, handing him a stick to fight back against the henchmen. In the end, the henchmen were beaten up by the playboy. It turned out that this playboy had once saved Dong-chul's life in prison. That's why today, Dong-chul helped the playboy. Sang-mi is still doing work at the shelter. She always said disparaging words to the people here because they were getting more and more crazy, making her nauseous. They threatened her mentally unstable mother, so she had to grit her teeth and endure. Today the owner of the stable came to see the parish priest because he discovered he had stomach cancer. He came because he wanted the priest to remove the tumor from his stomach. To repay the favor, he promised to donate all his assets. The priest also said that he would help the stable owner so that he could board the ship of salvation. Dong-chun came to visit and ask about his late grandmother. grandmother. He remembered the past and apologized for letting her go in such loneliness. Today the Aid group continues to spread propaganda on the streets. Coincidentally, Song Hwa's group was also playing nearby. They wanted to find out what was going on, so they came to ask Sang Mi about her situation. The three wondered if she really needed help, but because she thought about her mother's safety, Sang Mi couldn't tell the truth, so she said she was fine and didn't need help. Seeing that, Ms. Kong quickly took Sang Mi back. Ms. Kong angrily dragged Sang Mi into a taxi to go to the nursing home. She held it so tightly that Sang Mi's hand bled from her nail marks. Ms. Kong told Sang Mi's father that they had to abandon the propaganda because the devil sabotaged them, and the group of people they bumped into in the alley the day before used devil's words to entice and tempt Sang Mi. Mr. Im was angry and poured holy water on Sang Mi's body to cleanse those unclean stains. Song Hwa's group sat down to discuss as they still felt something was amiss. Song Hwa thought that Sang Mi might be in danger, but for some reason, she couldn't speak the truth, so they sought the help of the delivery guy. Just by describing the appearance, he could pinpoint where the person lived because there was no alley he didn't know. Song Hwa's group quickly found Sang Mi's address. Song Hwa asked his friends to go back first, and they would take action tomorrow, but after they left, he went alone. The other two friends, worried, followed him, and eventually, all three met and climbed over the wall into the house. However, one of them accidentally made a noise that alerted Sang Mi's father to check outside. At that moment, Dong Chul had just finished his shift and was returning home when he saw a girl being violently assaulted by a man. As he was about to intervene, his brother advised him not to get involved because Dong Chul had only recently been released from prison. Nevertheless, Dong Chul couldn't stand by and watch, so he broke down the door and dragged the abusive man out to beat him up. Mr. Im went outside to check, and the three were hiding behind the wall, holding their breath. When Mr. Im went around to the back, they managed to escape behind the wall. Suddenly, he received a phone call, so he turned back inside. Someone accidentally dropped a phone, so Song Hwa jumped out to find it. Seeing Sang Mi's frightened look, he called the police. Dong Chul was taken to the police station. He had to compensate for property damage and assault because the girl claimed they were a couple and that there had been no conflict. Perhaps threatened, the girl couldn't speak the truth. Dong Chul seemed to be caught up in life's injustice. After coming out, the bald police officer recognized Dong Chul and warned him to stay away from his son. Dong Chul agreed and walked away. Upon receiving news of a girl being held captive, the police arrived to handle the situation. But upon arrival, they saw Mr. Im at the shelter and didn't suspect anything, thinking she was the same mentally ill girl from before, so they left without much thought. Mr. Im returned inside the house and saw Sang Mi trying to break the door to leave, so he stopped her. Despite her efforts to explain and wake him up, Mr. Im remained infatuated with the priest. Song Hwa's group returned empty-handed, unable to do anything. They gathered by the river. The short friend, feeling disillusioned, didn't want to be involved in Sang Mi's affairs, but Song Hwa was determined to save her. Song Hwa remembered the phone that had been recording since he picked it up. They played it back and heard the conversation between Sang Mi's father and someone at the shelter. After saying goodbye to his two friends, Song Hwa went to Dong Chun's house. At this time Dong Chun had just arrived, but he was already leaning against the wall looking at Song Hwa. It wasn't until Song Hwa left that Dong Chun went inside to sit and drink. Remember when he was on leave to attend his grandmother's funeral, his friends also came to pay their respects, but when they saw Song Hwa, Dong Chun rushed in and punched Song Hwa because of the frustration he had experienced. Song Hwa only thought about his father's power to make things go this far. The short guy drove home and met the policeman's father drinking at the bar, so the two of them sat down to eat and talk, seemingly very intimately. As usual, early the next morning, everyone at the shelter came to pick up Sang Mi. After learning about the recent scandals, the priest became worried about Sang Mi, fearing that if she had too much contact with outsiders, something bad would happen, so he asked Ms. Kong to take Sang Mi back to start learning the ritual of becoming a mother. Sang Mi visits her mother and finds her always reading books about salvation and heaven. Fearing that her mother would be like her brother, she frantically tore the pages of that book. Her mother always thought that her son was not dead and that he was still lying next to her, so she asked Sang Mi to lie down with her to soothe them both to sleep. Sang Mi is determined to escape from here with her mother at any cost. When everyone was preparing to go fruit picking, the parish priest came to ask everyone. When he asked Sang Mi what the 9 fruits of God were, Sang Mi answered with a cold face: love, patience, diligence, joy, charity, peace, courtesy, trust and temperance. The short guy is still enthusiastically live streaming with ridiculous antics to attract views. While enthusiastically eating black bean noodles, the fat guy put his face in the bowl of noodles. The police father also stepped in and reminded them to study well to get into college. The dwarf again began to beg his father for money to buy books, but it was really for fun, not for study. He accidentally learned that Dong Chun had been released from prison. The next morning, the chubby friend told Song Hwa that someone had seen Dong Chul working at the bar. Upon hearing the news that Dong Chul was out of prison, Song Hwa rushed to the bar to find him, but when he arrived, a staff member stopped him. The man said that Dong Chul didn't want to see Song Hwa, so Song Hwa sadly left. While everyone was cleaning up in the evening, the old lady came to inquire about her grandson from the priest. He bragged that the boy was playing happily with the Lord. Hearing this lie, Sang Mi couldn't bear it any longer and stood up to say that it was all a deception. The old lady angrily accused her of being the devil Satan. Then those people huddled together to pray for her. After the meal, everyone had an internal meeting. The priest decided to formally announce Sang Mi's ascension to become the virtuous mother. Everyone agreed with this decision. With Sang Mi, they would wash away all sins to board the salvation ship. However, only Sang Mi knew that the Virgin Mary was just an excuse for the priest, and she would have to sacrifice her body to satisfy the lust of the priest. She had used her life to threaten everyone, but at this moment, the silent chubby guy had brought her mother to make her comply. While Song Hwa's group was drinking, the shipper came and said that Dong Chul was at the bullfighting arena. Song Hwa quickly drove there, the place where they often went to watch bullfights. Upon arrival, all the accumulated grievances were released through punches. Song Hwa apologized, but he couldn't help but look for Dong Chul because they were best friends, and he always treasured him. Finally, Song Hwa recounted Sang Mi's stories, and he wanted both of them to plan to save Sang Mi. This time, he would definitely not run away anymore. At the shelter, sitting next to her mother's bed, Sang Mi decided not to run away anymore but to destroy this hellish place and save her mother. After returning home from the shelter, Im scolded Sang Mi for raising her voice to the priest. He said that she did it because she was afraid of the priest's punishment. Sang Mi begged her father not to push her onto that path anymore and to stop these crazy things. But Im remained resolute in his strong belief at the shelter. Song Hwa visited her mother at the shelter. Afraid that her mother would get tired of listening to the old recording tape, he recorded a new tape about the girl he once liked, Sang Mi. He said that he liked her from the first sight, but when she asked for help, he ignored her, leading things to go too far. He didn't know why she needed help, but he was always worried about Sang Mi. Today, the bar owner sent his goons to deal with the dandy guy from the previous day, but they were like small shrimps compared to him. He wasn't afraid of any of them. He fought against a group of them, and not a single one could stand against him. Suddenly, a passing police officer saw the dandy guy chasing the leader, so the police officer also took out his baton and ran after them. Outside the church, after a conversation, the police officer accidentally found out that the dandy guy had a common enemy with him and seemed to be an ally. Instead of detaining the dandy guy back at the station, the police officer suggested that the two join forces. Chairman Min and his secretary were discussing recent events when she handed him the watch he had forgotten at her place. It seemed that these two had some romantic involvement. Chairman Min reached out to touch her cheek, but Song Hwa intervened, causing the two to separate. Knowing the affair between the two, Song Hwa wasn't gentle with the secretary. He engaged in a heated argument with her, leaving her unable to speak. He studied law in Seoul, you know. Meanwhile, Song Hwa's group was borrowing a car to conveniently monitor the people holding Sang Mi captive. At the shelter, Sang Mi went to her mother's room but couldn't find her. Worried, she hurriedly went to look for her. She ran to a warehouse filled with people crying and full of grievances. Finally, Sang Mi found her mother with the curly-haired man. She threatened him that if he dared to harm her mother, she wouldn't let it go. But the curly-haired man saw through her. He wasn't afraid of her empty threats. Instead, he threatened her back. He grabbed her hair and dragged her away, warning her not to look at him with such hostility, or he would kill both her and her mother. Sang Mi was frightened and remained silent. After the curly-haired man left, Sang Mi's mother came and said that Sang Jin, her brother, was picking her up. When Sang Mi left, it was the first time her mother said she wanted to leave this place, the shelter. This was a source of added strength for Sang Mi. The next morning, Song Hwa's group sat in the car, waiting outside Sang Mi's house and followed the foster home's vehicle to a dark and eerie place deep in the woods. During today's ceremony, the priest began preaching impure and baseless doctrines, from irrational things to nonsense. He treated diseases and did everything through prayer, causing the congregation to go mad with prayer and drawing ink marks on their bodies. At this point, the congregation was still praying with folded hands. Song Hwa's group also infiltrated inside and witnessed the sight of the priest rallying with the congregation. It was not difficult to recognize that this was a typical cult. The short guy, as usual, was live streaming on his phone, but suddenly the phone rang, catching the priest's attention. When Song Hwa's group returned to the car, the priest also approached them. Song Hwa also stepped forward to speak with the priest. He interrogated him about his actions, but he did not answer, instead threatening that if they wanted to go all the way, it would be a sea of fire that they could not escape. While the curly-haired guy was counting the money collected after the prayer session, the cattle ranch owner came and handed over all of his property to the priest to help cure him of the demon tumor. Later that evening, while Sang Mi was alone in her room, Song Hwa appeared and texted her, asking if she really needed help. To avoid making noise, Sang Mi responded with a nod. Song Hwa texted back that she would definitely rescue rescue her and then leave. After going outside, Song Hwa received a call from Dong Chun. The four young men gathered to plan to rescue Sang Mi. The next morning, the Cayenne Pepper brothers continued to follow the foster home's vehicle. Dong Chun arrived later, but it seemed they were preparing to leave. Apparently, after the conversation with the priest yesterday, they had made different preparations. Song Hwa's group stood in front of the foster home's vehicle. Some high-ranking mayors sat together after a hearty meal. When the group went outside, they met Lee Jin-sok, a member of the government, also known as the politician's lapdog. Song Hwa's father had also heard about this guy and, because of his thuggish nature, he showed disdain for him. Before leaving, District Chief Ying deliberately brought up Song Hwa's past from 3 years ago, making Song Hwa's father angry and leaving. The secretary was no less, as before getting on the car, she made some sarcastic remarks that left Ying speechless. The foster home's vehicle was blocked by Song Hwa's group. One held the curly-haired guy, the other rescued Sang Mi. The scene on the bridge was chaotic. After a series of punches and kicks, they finally rescued Sang Mi and left in the car. Upon learning of the incident, the furious priest had Sang Mi's father fast and instructed everyone to search every nook and cranny to find Sang Mi. The curly-haired guy also specially sought the help of the police, saying that even if they had to turn this Muji upside down, they must find Sang Mi. While they were gathering by the river, Dong Chun also arrived. Sang Mi remembered the time she met Dong Chun in prison. She couldn't even speak to apologize or thank him, and Dong Chun was like her benefactor. Sang Mi thanked the four Cayenne Pepper brothers. They took Sang Mi to a secret room, the room of a friend from high school. While the fat and short friends were boasting about how they had just fought, Dong Chun noticed Sang Mi sitting huddled in a corner, trembling. He approached her to inquire. They asked her about what had happened. Since Sang Mi still couldn't speak, Song Hwa suggested that she rest. They went to dine at someone else's place, and Sang Mi sat like a boss while the host brought noodles to the table. At that moment, Sang Mi revealed that they had offered her body to the perverted priest to receive redemption. Before leaving, they gave Sang Mi a phone for easy communication. After leaving, the group gathered at their familiar pub. While they were chatting, the owner brought a special dish as a gift. Dong Chun said he didn't trust the police, but the short guy said his father could help with this matter. Dong Chun still firmly believed that as long as there was money, even the police would no longer be upright, so they were not to be trusted. Since Sang Mi went missing, Kong Trong became anxious and worried. She asked Suri to give Sang Mi's mother some medicine, but Suri deliberately didn't comply. At this time, Sang Mi's father was frantically praying. He was like a madman, even beating himself to atone. He had sunk into a delusional world and the brainwashing by these people couldn't save him anymore. Today, Song Hwa's father, the district chairman, and the secretary went to meet Officer Lee. This time, the police were entrusted with the important task of eliminating the people obstructing him. After receiving the task, Officer Lee went to meet Flowershirt. Because the sum of money was substantial, and he was also the enemy of Flowershirt, he agreed. In the evening, in Su Du Kang's room, he absent-mindedly touched the scar on his back and recalled the past. Because he had followed the path of the Lord, Satan had possessed her husband, obstructing her and brutally beating her. Back at the present, Su Du Kang still firmly believed that the Lord would redeem all the pain within her. Today was the day Sang Mi was supposed to report to the police, but Dong Chun received a call from Flowershirt, so he couldn't accompany her. Fearing being caught, the group decided to take a taxi. Meanwhile, Dong Chun and Flowershirt went to the bar owner's office to retrieve confidential documents, but it wasn't easy as the place was filled with his henchmen. However, even the gangsters had to respect these guys, who had a reputation for brawling in prison. Despite their smaller number, they were not weak. Eventually, unable to prolong the situation, Flowershirt instructed Dong Chun to get the documents while he handled the rest. However, upon entering the room, Dong Chun faced the very person who had once helped him, so he refrained from acting. Later, Flowershirt entered the room, and Dong Chun pleaded for him to spare his friend, but Flowershirt had to act to end everything. On the taxi, the driver kept glancing at Sang Mi through the mirror. Perhaps he was also one of the sheep from the shelter. When they arrived, everyone got off the taxi, and Sang Mi approached the driver, telling him to inform the people from the shelter. Then they all went to the police station to report everything, but coincidentally, the police said Sang Mi was the girl reported missing by her father since last night. Song Hwa's group was considered the kidnappers of Sang Mi. Knowing she couldn't change the truth, Sang Mi requested that the police release her friend and stated that she wasn't kidnapped but had come voluntarily. At this moment, the people from the shelter arrived and took her back. The people from the shelter came and took Sang Mi back. During the prayer ceremony, Sang Mi exposed their crimes, but the priest wasn't flustered. He told the sheep that because Sang Mi had been outside for a while, many demons had possessed her. Then the people continuously hit Sang Mi to drive the demons away. Unable to do anything, she could only grit her teeth and endure. Luckily, Mrs. Im ran over and intervened. However, the priest continued to claim that Mrs. Im had also been possessed by those demons, leading Mr. Im to angrily beat his wife. Sang Mi could only scream in helplessness. The crowd of sheep below cheered like a group of lunatics. Since Dong Chun's group was being detained, the secretary went to meet with Officer Lee to resolve the situation, and eventually, they were all released. The short guy returned home, and his father didn't forget to warn him to stay away from Sang Mi and focus on studying. Finally, the suffering Sang Mi was taken to the redemption room to repent for her sins. Flowerhair went to see Su Du Kong, asking about her recent unusual behavior. After some teasing, they both ended up threatening each other to ensure that their mutual trust remained intact. The district chairman was reprimanding his paralyzed wife lying in bed. He even compared her to the secretary and said that she should stay paralyzed so that people would think he was taking care of his wife. When Song Hwa entered, he changed his attitude and acted as if nothing had happened, showing affection for his wife. Song Hwa asked her father to look into the shelter in exchange for her promise to be obedient and study diligently. It was the first time he had seen his son suddenly willing to listen, so he nodded in agreement. Officer Lee went to meet Flowershirt to retrieve the documents. Dong Chun was also there, and the familiarity within this small town was making Officer Lee's head spin. Flowershirt handed the file to Officer Lee, which would also help bankrupt Flowershirt's enemy. The Song Hwa group gathered at the bar again. Dong Chun arrived and asked why Sang Mi had returned to the shelter. Song Hwa said she had sought her father's help, which led to these recent developments. At the shelter, Suri continued to administer medication to Im. After learning of the failed plans, Dong Chun said they would need a new strategy. This time, they could only trust themselves. Ms. Kong brought food for Sang Mi, requesting that she read the prayer book and repent. However, Sang Mi refused to submit. Continuously shaking her head, Sang Mi angered Ms. Kong, who left in frustration with the food. In the morning, Officer Lee and his colleagues met with Congressman Park. With no other option, he tried to escape by jumping from the balcony, but the police caught him. The next morning, after a redemption sermon, Ms. Kong met with Suri, who had been here for over a year and faithfully performed all the rituals. Ms. Kong wanted Suri to become a fellow ascetic and assist the virtuous mother. She was happy to receive this blessing. Despite seeing his daughter being beaten and starved to the point of weakness, Mr. Im remained unenlightened. Today, the shelter continued its outreach, while the Song Hwa group sat at a nearby cafe. Dong Chun pretended to be an innocent student and quickly caught Ms. Kang's attention. Initially, he planned to make an excuse about his mother's birthday, but Suri stopped him, saying it would take only a few minutes to complete a survey. While filling it out, Dong Chun accidentally spilled coffee on his pants, but he remained graceful, impressing Ms. Kong. Soon, the shelter's vehicle arrived to take Dong Chun away. Song Hwa had surmised that these people would pay attention to those with money, so he had already given Dong Chun an expensive watch. In the car, Curly was delighted to see the expensive watch on Dong Chun's wrist. Upon arriving at the shelter, Ms. Kong asked Suri to lead the group of students for a quick tour and then took them to the prayer room. Dong Chun found everything here to be insane, as if everyone had lost their souls. On the other side, Sang Mi saw the illusion of her brother, always cheering her on, encouraging her to keep going. Song Hwa arranged to meet her father's secretary to talk privately because now this small town was all tied up in that religion. Even the police were the same, so Song Hwa couldn't trust her father or anyone in power anymore. Song Hwa wanted the secretary to help her, cleverly threatening that her father was preparing for the governor election and she would publicly announce her father's affair with the secretary. With the scandal, he would definitely give up on her, and to keep things smooth, she would have to help Song Hwa. After the tour, Curly suggested taking Dong Chun back. Dong Chun also boasted about his wealth, which pleased Curly. Before parting ways, Curly also requested Dong Chun's phone number. After getting off the car, Dong Chun went to the familiar bar of the four brothers to discuss. At this moment, the priest also arrived to bring food to Sang Mi. Determined to survive and leave here, Sang Mi ate porridge and began to read prayers. She then visited her mother. The next morning, Dong Chun returned to the shelter just as Ko Kong brought items for the prayer ceremony. Today, Sang Mi would officially begin studying to become the Blessed Mother. With no other choice, Sang Mi had to comply with them like a puppet. After receiving a call from her father's secretary, Song Hwa returned home to find her father sitting, chatting happily with the priest, surprising and angering her. Today Song Hwa's father invited the priest to his house. Song Hwa angrily cursed that he was not the pastor like everyone thought but the leader of the cult, but the priest still remained gentle and said that he was just a priest spreading salvation. He told his son that he had asked the priest to take care of his sick friend so he could rest assured. Knowing that his father had shaken hands with this beast, Song Hwa was extremely angry. 3 years ago, it's the same now, he always sacrifices everything for money. So Song Hwa left angrily. When the priest left, Song Hwa stopped the car and warned the priest that if he dared to touch his friend, he would not leave it alone. The priest asked if Song Hwa also liked Sang Mi. The priest said they were just preparing for some kind of lame salvation, so don't misunderstand. Dong Chun also came to the hospital at this time. Everyone was sitting and listening to a schoolgirl say beautiful words about the parish priest that had been prepared. At this time, Song Hwa also sneaked into the shelter. Today, the parish priest also officially introduced the person who will become the Virgin Mary. Everyone stood up and cheered. The priest again started saying nonsense and crazy rituals that he himself thought up to satisfy his perversion. It is Sang Mi who will wash away the sins of the sheep. When the priest and Sang Mi become one, everyone will be on the ship of salvation. Everyone was dancing and singing for joy. When Sang Mi went down, Dong Chun was about to move toward Sang Mi but was stopped by Suri. It turns out Suri is an undercover reporter here. She also knew that Dong Chun was the student who was sent to the re-education camp 3 years ago. Song Hwa had now also sneaked into the priest's room. Sang Mi sauntered back to her room. While exploring the surroundings, Song Hwa heard someone's footsteps coming, so he quickly hid. The priest and some apostles are discussing the date of the ceremony. The priest asked the sheep not to eat meat, to eat white rice to purify their bodies. He will see the Lord's instructions and report back the next day and end the meeting. The curly-haired guy still stayed and asked the priest to correct the words for his speech. After everyone left, the priest also stood and prayed, gesticulating with the flames. Then he burst out laughing like a madman. But this scene was also filmed by Song Hwa. He thought that now he was almighty and no one could oppose him. While happy, the priest suddenly heard the phone ring. Suspicious, so he stood up and went to check, but it seemed Song Hwa had already escaped in time. While Song Hwa left because he didn't know the terrain here, it seemed like Song Hwa was wandering around. Suddenly Sang Mi's mother grabbed Song Hwa's hand and Sang Mi also came. Because she was afraid he would be in danger, she told him to leave quickly. He offered to take her out, but she said it wasn't possible yet. At this time, Ms. Kong arrived, so Song Hwa had to quickly leave. The shelter staff were also taking the students back. On the bus, the curly-haired man tried to ask Dong Chun if he knew any friends who rode motorcycles, trying to investigate whether Dong Chun was associated with Song Hwa's group or not. When bidding farewell, Suri gave Dong Chun a piece of paper. She warned that it was dangerous here and advised him not to come again. After the meeting, Song Hwa revealed that his father had joined forces with the parish priest and the police. Therefore, Song Hwa suggested uploading the video he had just taken to his channel, hoping that public opinion would pressure the police to take action. At the shelter, Sang Mi also went to find Suri because she noticed Suri was different from the others and seemed to be observing the place. Moreover, she was the only one who asked Sang Mi why she was still there. Sang Mi had been there for 4 years, and no one had spoken to her like that. Suri no longer denied it and admitted that she didn't trust this place and was an undercover journalist here to dismantle this evil organization. The two decided to join hands to help each other. Sang Mi's mother suddenly felt pain and vomited, but the nurses ignored it. Mr. Im had also gained the trust of the parish priest, so today the parish priest allowed him to go to a special place where evil people gathered. The group approached a prison cell of someone they believed was possessed, and the parish priest performed a ritual to drive out the demon. Then, he officially appointed Mr. Im as a soothing apostle. Mr. Im was overjoyed to be given this task, constantly praying and striking the stomach of this lamb to drive out the demon. Dong Chun also went to apologize to his older brother. Coincidentally, Dong Chun discovered that his mother's colleague was one of the congregation at the shelter. She borrowed money everywhere, plunging the family into debt. After returning to his room, Mr. Im had no idea that he was committing murder, but he was extremely proud of being chosen. The next morning, Dong Chun returned to the shelter. Starting from today, they would have to leave their phones before entering. Fortunately, Song Hwa had prepared another phone for Dong Chun. During lunch, Sang Mi also handed Dong Chun a piece of paper. She said that if there was anything, please pass the message to her through Suri, someone they could trust. In the vision, Mrs. Im saw Sang Jin telling her to leave here and save Sang Mi. Perhaps due to the medication, she was gradually becoming more lucid. Mrs. Sang Mi woke up after the dream and went to find Sang Mi but got lost and coincidentally met Ms. Kong. Seeing that the medicine seemed to have worn off, Ms. Kong quickly took Mrs. Sang Mi away. When Sang Mi ran to her, she only saw her mother's hair clip. It was the clip she had bought for her mother when she was allowed to go out with Song Hwa's group. Ms. Kong tied Mrs. Im up and then injected her with a strange drug. When Sang Mi approached, Ms. Kong quickly hid the syringe. Faced with Sang Mi's questioning, Ms. Kong responded with ruthless threats. Sang Mi knelt down and apologized to Ms. Kong. Then Ms. Kong gave Sang Mi some time to visit her mother. Seeing her mother's pain-stricken and dirty feet, Sang Mi quickly clipped her hair and left. Today is a ceremony to expel evil spirits. A lamb whose soul was possessed by the devil was brought up. After the priest read the prayer, the sheep fell down. Then she stood up and said she was no longer in pain. Dong Chun knew this was a play, but the sheep listened attentively. After the prayer, the curly-haired guy started brainwashing the students again. Dong Chun said he wanted to meet the priest, but the curly-haired guy said they had to become sheep and stay here to attend the training course for 3 weeks. Everything was free, but in the end, each child was charged 2 million won. While Dong Chun used the excuse of going to the bathroom to sneak away, he accidentally heard someone scream. Without thinking much, Dong Chun immediately followed the screams and encountered the priest. Seeing Dong Chu's the parish priest, he said that what he heard was only the lamentations of people praying. The fat guy, the parish priest's henchman, and the curly corner guy went to Song Hwa's regular pub to look for someone, but luckily everyone wasn't here today. Right now people are protesting outside. Song Hwa's father and the secretary were still flirting right in front of his wife. After the secretary left, he began to criticize his wife again. He sees his wife as a screen to build a good image with outsiders. After the ceremony, Sang Mi also told Suri about Ms. Kong injecting her mother with a strange drug. Suri also suspected that perhaps it was because of the medicine here that Sang Mi's mother's illness became worse and worse. The two of them planned together to find that strange medicine. Suri went to see Dong Chun and asked him to find a sample of the medicine that Ms. Kong had injected into Sang Mi's mother. While searching, someone came into Dong Chun and hid behind the cabinet, but he still hasn't been found. Dong Chun went back outside to get back in the car. When we got back, Dong Chun made an appointment to meet Song Hwa to talk. Dong Chun said that he met the priest when he touched him, so he couldn't move and everything was crazy. Song Hwa also agreed when he sneaked into his room. Early the next morning, Ms. Kong took Sang Mi up the mountain to wait for instructions from the Lord. Sang Mi also sincerely listened. She tried to hide her emotions so Ms. Kong wouldn't notice. At the same time, a farmer also discovered a corpse on the mountain. Officer Lee, realizing the proximity to the shelter, began to suspect the place, considering the past incidents. During the meal, Dong Chun noticed that everyone was using a particular water, which they claimed was holy water taken from the priest's face and foot wash. These drops of blessed water from the priest would help ward off evil spirits and illnesses. Due to the numerous suspicions, Officer Lee went to the shelter to investigate. The priest had Sang Mi come out to answer Officer Lee's questions. However, Sang Mi only claimed that she had autism, which led to such peculiar behavior. After the tape was circulated online, someone sent them a strange photo, but they couldn't reach the dwarf. As Officer Lee was about to leave, the chairman and his secretary arrived. The Song Hwa group went to meet the delivery man, hoping he would remember to provide information, but he was drunk and was kicked out by the bar owner. The delivery man also thought that the delivery person was the one who eavesdropped on him working in Daegu. While Kong was teaching, Sang Mi sneaked into Kang's room. Suri showed Sang Mi a way to unlock it, and the door opened. Kong also returned to the room to take medication. Luckily, Sang Mi managed to hide in the wardrobe. When Kong left, Sang Mi found her phone in the wardrobe. Then the priest called Sang Mi to the prayer room. With only the two of them, Sang Mi asked the priest why he had to choose her as the Virgin Mary. He lied that it was a directive from God, but Sang Mi didn't believe these lies. Seeing Sang Mi's attitude, the priest no longer hesitated. It turned out that there had been someone chosen as the Virgin Mary before, but she later jumped off a building. The first time he saw Sang Mi, he saw two people who resembled each other very much, as if Sang Mi was the reincarnation of the Virgin Mary. Knowing this insane reason, Sang Mi loudly rebuked the old pervert. He didn't give up and pinned Sang Mi down to assault her. Knowing she couldn't resist, Sang Mi apologized to the priest, saying to give her more time. If this was her mission, she asked to accept it. The priest agreed, saying that God would wait until the perfect maturity. While taking care of Sang Mi's mother, she also woke up, so Suri reminded IM not to take the medication that Kong gave her. So when Kong came, IM pretended to be delusional about a new paradise where Sang Jin was, but when she left, IM took the pill from under her tongue. Leaving the prayer room, Dong Chun pulled Sang Mi aside to talk, but the curly-haired guy arrived, so Dong Chun pretended to be asking Sang Mi questions because she seemed to be the same age as him. After Sang Mi left, the curly-haired guy told Dong Chun not to talk to Sang Mi on his own because she was the Holy Mother helping everyone wash away their sins. Upon returning to her room, Sang Mi also retrieved the phone where she had recorded the conversation between her and the priest. During today's meeting, the curly-haired man continued to lecture about the new paradise. He said that if they practiced well, when they died, they would not have to go to hell. Then the curly-haired man suggested that everyone participate in a training session at the shelter, all for free, with only 2 million won for meals. After the lecture, the curly-haired man called Dong Chun and tempted him to quickly join the training session to secure a ticket on the salvation ship. Using her mother's birthday as an excuse, Suri asked permission from Master Kong to go out without realizing that Kong had suspected and followed her. On the way back, two old women joined, having come here to pray, believing the words of the priest. According to Suri's medicine, her colleague confirmed that it was a type of drug that turns normal people into psychopaths. The colleague advised her to leave this matter as it was too dangerous, but Suri was determined to see it through. Dong Chun was drawing a map of where Sang Mi and her mother were. Also, with not much time left, Dong Chun decided to stay at the shelter. However, he needed 2 million won for membership fees, so he asked his gambling friends for help. When Suri went out, Master Kong also saw the man come out. He got on a journalist's car and left. The next morning, the owner of the cattle farm passed away. His 2 children were extremely angry and resentful. He had given all his assets to the shelter with the hope of escaping cancer. How could they deceive him like that? The son carried a stick and went to curse the priest. After hearing about the old man's death, everyone believed that he had boarded the salvation ship and gone to heaven. Through his hypnotic powers, even though it made the young man calm down, the priest asked the curly-haired man to return the old man's land deed. Seeing this, the 2 children also let this matter go. The next day, a drunken wanderer appeared. The bald police officer continued to bring the old man to the shelter. Before leaving, the curly-haired man also gave the bald police officer a box of ginseng, but it turned out to be filled with money. Thinking he had done the right thing, this police officer happily accepted it. Knowing that Officer Lee was not entirely happy serving under his father, Song Hwa came to reveal the truth about his father's collaboration with the shelter. If Officer Lee wanted to overthrow the district chairman, he should investigate the shelter with him. Although hesitant, Officer Lee eventually agreed. Today, Kong made Sang Mi drink a strange medicine to extract the poison from her body. With no other choice, Sang Mi complied, but her eyes were full of anger and resentment. This reminded Kong of her daughter. As previously investigated, Song Hwa took Officer Lee to the church where the priest had previously stayed. It turned out that he was a fake. All his credentials were forged, and with his lively speech, he had deceived everyone. He and his accomplice, the curly-haired guy, even embezzled funds here. Dong Chun was helping everyone in the garden. He befriended an old lady, approached her to ask for her name, and quietly wrote it down in his phone in the restroom. Suri took Sang Mi back to the room and talked about the medication that Kong had injected into Sang Mi's mother. Sang Mi asked Suri to give a small piece of paper to Dong Chun. When Suri left, she took out her phone and looked at the family picture. While Mr. Im was taking his wife for a walk, Mrs. Im was fearful because her husband had become so blinded. Kong met Suri to inquire about her profession before coming to the shelter. Suri said she had just finished high school. Recalling the scene of seeing Suri outside with a man the previous night, Kong was certain that Suri was up to something suspicious. Song Hwa and Officer Lee went to the land office to investigate the woman whose name Dong Chun had provided. She had owned a lot of land but sold it all a few years ago, and now the name on the deed was the curly-haired man, leaving Officer Lee stunned. After Song Hwa and the officer left, the staff at the land office quickly called the curly-haired man to report about the inspection of his land. While having fun at a massage parlor, the curly-haired man coincidentally ran into an old acquaintance. Through his account, he learned that there was a channel constantly live streaming about their shelter. Noticing a contact number, the curly-haired man pretended to contact that number, arranging a meeting to provide more information. When the elder brother who had helped Dong Chun returned home, he found it in a mess, probably the debt collectors who had just left. Under the ground, he found many envelopes donated to the shelter. Seeing his mother in a daze, giving away all her belongings, he was furious. What's more, he noticed numerous bruises on her, but she claimed they were part of the ritual under fire to ward off demons. Helpless and seeing his deluded mother, he cried out in frustration. At this time, the dwarf friend arrived at the rendezvous point. The curly-haired man rushed in and knocked the dwarf unconscious, then took him into the car. Unintentionally, this was seen by the yellow-shirted delivery man. Noticing the strange behavior of the curly-haired man, Dong Chun immediately followed. It turned out that the curly-haired man had brought the dwarf here for captivity. When the curly-haired man came out, he bumped into Dong Chun. Dong Chun explained that he couldn't sleep, so he went for a walk and coincidentally saw the curly-haired man, that's all. As the two were going downstairs, Dong Chun heard the curly-haired man scream and hastily explained that it was probably just a cat's cry. While Sang Mi and her father were in the prayer room, Dong Chun's good brother, because of the temptations here, became deluded and entered. He brought gasoline with the intention of destroying this place. After spreading the gasoline everywhere, he lit the fire and would burn down these insane things. Out of anger, Dong Chun's brother brought the gasoline to burn down this place. At this time, Dong Chun also rushed in, and Mr. Im also took Sang Mi out. Thinking that Dong Chun was an accomplice of these scammers, the brother was very angry, but Dong Chun said that he came here to destroy this place, so please trust him. At this moment, the sheep also ran to Dong Chun, telling him that his brother had hit him and run away. This action of Dong Chun succeeded in gaining the trust of the priest and the curly-haired man. Officer Lee went to meet Song Hwa to talk, but as there were only accusations and no evidence, they couldn't do anything. While the curly-haired man and Kong were talking, Dong Chun stood behind the wall eavesdropping on their conversation and knew that it was the curly-haired man's insatiable greed that had led Inspector Lee into the case. But the curly-haired man said that he was only concerned with fundraising for the shelter. Naturally, Kong didn't believe his lies, so she drove the curly-haired man away. Kong and the priest would manage this place. Touching on the curly-haired man's dark past, he threatened Kong about her past. Kong had killed her husband, but the curly-haired man had covered it up, so she didn't go to jail. Reflecting on her past, Kong was afraid, thinking that God was the one who saved her from that hell, not the curly-haired man. But he still threatened to choke her, claiming that he was the one with power in this place. After the curly-haired man left, Kong pleaded with God not to abandon her because she had dedicated her daughter, her family, and her life to him. The next morning Dong Chun sneaked into Sang Mi's mother's hospital room to talk to her. Dong Chun tells her to continue pretending to be crazy like always to fool everyone. When he was about to leave, Mrs. Im gave her hairpin as if she put all her trust in Dong Chun. Because he couldn't stay long, Dong Chun quickly left. When there was no one there, Dong Chun snuck into the office to steal documents and then gave them to Sang Mi and Suri. The shelter has falsified records to turn all the sheep into mental patients, and it is very possible that they are increasing the number of patients and turning this place into a mental hospital and receiving benefits from the state. Suri offered to bring this document to Seoul. With this evidence, the prosecutor will investigate everything clearly. At night, when Suri was about to go out, Ms. Kong stopped her. Ms. Kong investigated and learned that Suri was an undercover reporter here. Then they dunked Suri in a spinning washing machine to wash away the Satan in her head. Tonight Sang Mi also presided over a prayer ceremony. She kept reading Bible verses in a crazy way. Seeing her daughter suffering like that, Mrs. Im couldn't hold back her tears. After getting the documents back from Suri, the parish priest also began to suspect Sang Mi. Haven't seen the short guy in a long time, so everyone is worried. At this time, the shipper delivering the food said that last night he saw the dwarf being put on the sponsor's car. Song Hwa texted Dong Chun for help. Dong Chun remembered the warehouse in the forest, so he informed Song Hwa immediately. Tonight, an alcoholic died and the curly-haired brothers worked together to bury the body. The priest also took Suri to meet Sang Mi. At this time, Suri was injected with drugs, so she was no longer conscious. Knowing that everyone was investigating her, Sang Mi cursed and performed a fire prayer to chase the demon out of Suri. According to Dong Chun's words, Song Hwa's group also arrived. At this time, Dong Chun also ran to inform everyone that a group of young people broke into the hospital. At this time, Song Hwa's group had successfully rescued the short guy with curly hair, but they were already one step late. When Song Hwa's group was about to get in the car, Dong Chun pretended to stop Song Hwa and cooperated, fighting with Dong Chun. Then everyone drove away. After this incident, the parish priest and everyone trusted Dong Chun very much. After going outside, Sang Mi took the opportunity to give holy water to Dong Chun as a signal for him to save Suri. The priest was also very angry when Tak Zoen abducted someone without informing him. He hinted that he would expel Tak Zoen if he acted on his own again. Im took Sang Mi back to her room and told her to pray. Sang Mi asked her father to let her go to see her mother because she had encountered divine power in her dream. He said that Sang Mi had to stay by her mother's side while praying for her, and then her mother would recover and not be sick anymore. While accompanying Kong to the prayer room, Dong Chun pretended to have stomach pain to ask Kong to let him go to the bathroom. Despite not wanting to, because the followers called Kong to read hymns, she reluctantly agreed to let Dong Chun go. Song Hwa's group met with Inspector Lee, but because the police turned a blind eye to the power in Muji, they couldn't do anything. Everything had to be permitted by Song Hwa's father if they wanted anything. Song Hwa said that she would make the media interested in her father's affairs, and if Inspector Lee agreed to help them, all his accomplishments would be recognized by everyone. Outside, Dong Chun saw the fat mute guy taking Suri away. He found Sang Mi and asked her if she knew the location. Sang Mi had also been locked up here, so she directed Dong Chun to the location. On the way to the hospital, his short friend passed his father's place. Remembering the scene when his father shook hands with Tak Zoen, he couldn't speak up even though he was beaten. When Kong was preparing to inject Suri, Dong Chun arrived in time. He made Kong taste the lethal injection and then took Suri outside. As long as Suri crossed the entire bridge, Song Hwa would come to pick her up. After receiving the call, Song Hwa immediately set off. At that moment, Suri was also running across the bridge, but unfortunately, she encountered Tak Zoen, who was also passing by. He dragged Suri down into the river. When Song Hwa arrived, there was no one there, so he texted Dong Chun. At this time, Song Hwa's mother also called. At that moment, Suri was trying her best to run across the bridge. Seeing a car coming, she thought she was being rescued, but it turned out to be Tak Zoen's car. He gleefully got out of the car and dragged Suri down into the river to drown her. Song Hwa arrived a step too late. By the time he arrived, there was no one there, so he texted Dong Chun. At this time, Song Hwa's mother suddenly called him to quickly return home. After drowning Suri, Tak Zoen took her body and left. Dong Chun told Sang Mi that he had saved Suri, but it seemed that she hadn't met Song Hwa yet. Sang Mi entered the prayer room, and the followers asked her about Kong because today Kong was supposed to lead the ceremony, but they hadn't seen her since earlier. Sang Mi said that she would preside over the ceremony, surprising the followers. Sang Mi began to pretend to say things like the priest usually did to win the hearts of the people. The secretary was talking to Song Hwa's father about Song Hwa's plan. It seemed that this time she would be intense as she was still working with the media inspection team to make things intense. When Song-hwa returned, she found her mother lying on the floor. Her mother had revealed the true face of her father, so Song-hwa asked her chubby friend to take her mother out of there, while he himself went to provide evidence about his father to the journalists. Meanwhile, when the chubby friend arrived, Song-hwa's mother had been taken elsewhere, so she informed Song-hwa. At the shelter, Sang-mi saw people cleaning Suri's room. They had done the same when the mentally challenged boy died. So Sang-mi suspected that Suri had encountered foul play. Dong-chun went to the bathroom and found Tak-zone's belongings covered in mud. He went to the river and found one of Suri's shoes. There was no doubt that Tak-zoen had killed Suri. At this time, Song-hwa also went to find her father. Seeing her father pretending to care, Song-hwa played the recording that her mother had given her. It turned out that he was the one who pushed her mother down the mountain, causing her to be disabled. Every day he would come to scold her mother. Song-hwa promised to expose her father's true face and leave. Unable to let this happen, he asked Inspector Lee for help. When Song-hwa arrived at the hospital to find her mother, Tak-zoen appeared. After a struggle, Tak-zoen also took the recording. Before leaving, Tak-zoen said if there was any blame, it should be on Song-hwa's father. But the truth was that everything was part of Song-hwa's plan, and the recording was fake. After several events, the patrol officer learned that the shelter was exploiting the bald police officer, so she went to the priest to ask them to stop this. However, the priest was not afraid at all. He even said that the number of people the bald police officer had brought in had exceeded dozens, so if things fell apart, the bald police officer would have to shoulder some responsibility. Seeing this, the patrol officer quietly left. Then the priest came and released a drunkard and gave him an important task. The priest also called Chairman Min to arrange for him a new assistant. The person entrusted was none other than Tak-zoen. He would come as a bodyguard for the priest. After learning about Suri's situation, Song-hwa went to report to Inspector Lee, but without evidence, it was difficult for them to infiltrate. Therefore, Song-hwa came up with a plan through the testimony of his short friend. They could search the warehouse in the mountain where the short friend had been imprisoned. At this point, Ko-kong also woke up and in her hand was a note to meet Dong-chun. He had learned that her daughter had also been the Virgin Mary because she looked just like Sang-mi. After the events, Dong-chun asked Ko-kong if she still believed in the priest. Dong-chun promised to prove to Ko-kong that it was all lies. After returning, the police officer asked the bald police officer to surrender. At this time, the drunkard also unexpectedly appeared and attacked the police officer, but the bald police officer saved her. Luckily, the police officer managed to control him in time, and the bald police officer also knew that this was the work of the shelter. Now he regretted and confessed everything to his son. The next morning, according to the testimony of the short friend, Inspector Lee came to the shelter to search, but this warehouse had nothing. Without enough evidence, the police left empty-handed. The priest also held an internal meeting. He no longer trusted Tak-zoen, so he proposed Dong-chun and Tak-zoen as his new assistants. This made Tak-zoen very resentful. Now that Tak-zoen had been pushed aside, Dong-chun reminded Song-hwa to follow him. When Tak-zoen was alone, Song-hwa deliberately provoked him to confess that he had killed Suri. Incited by his anger, Tak-zoen fell into a trap. He started hitting Song-hwa, but Song-hwa did not fight back. At this time, the two short and chubby friends also came to stop him. The police coincidentally passed by based on the recording and intentional injury charge, and Tak-zoen was taken to the station. In the forest, Sang-mi said that she would destroy this hellish place and save all the people who were lost here. Dong-chun told Sang-mi to reveal her true identity because that was the only way he could be imprisoned in that secret prison, and that was the only way to find the others who knew this was very dangerous. In the prison, when he went to the toilet, Tak-zoen knocked down the police officer and ran outside. The priest also arranged to meet Im separately because there were more and more evil spirits here. Perhaps the salvation ship was about to sink, so the priest proposed to hold a wedding tomorrow to save everyone quickly. After Im went out, the priest began to shout like a madman. When Im went out, he met Ko-kong. What the priest said to Im was very similar to what he said to her 3 years ago. This made Ko-kong very doubtful. Was her faith being shaken? While performing the ceremony with the sheep, the priest called Sang-mi and said that the time had come. At dawn tomorrow they would hold a wedding and become one. Sang-mi also pretended to agree and knelt down to kiss the priest's hand. During the evening prayer ceremony, the priest burned the book he was holding to prove that his body was immortal and the fire could not harm him. The priest announced that after the wedding tomorrow, he would transfer the power of immortality to everyone. The sheep were extremely happy and continuously bowed their heads in worship. However, Ko-kong quietly went into the priest's room, where she saw a fire extinguisher. While thinking, the priest walked in. Seeing Ko-kong discovering the fire extinguisher, he said that sometimes lies were a tactic for salvation and questioned whether her faith had been shaken. Ko Kong still affirmed that her faith was still very strong. Song Hwa arranged to meet the secretary outside to ask about his mother, but there was no way the secretary would reveal it. She threatened that if Song Hwa wanted to see his mother again, he would have to give them the tape recorder. Song Hwa thought back to what his father did to his mother, and his anger and resentment grew more and more. Mr. Im and Sang Mi are sitting and talking in the room. Sang Mi asked if their family would have a happier life if their father didn't get involved in all of this and become a disgusting monster like he is now. Mr. Im still foolishly believes that these things are true and tells Sang Mi not to pay attention to what has happened recently. Song Hwa ran around the hospitals looking for her mother but couldn't find her. At this time, while Mrs. Im was sitting outside, an ambulance came into the hospital to care for victims. When the employee went to work to register, Mrs. Im approached and received a call for help from Song Hwa's mother. She said she was forced here so she should call Song Hwa. While the nurse was not here, Mrs. Im called Song Hwa. Knowing the time had come, Dong Chun deleted all the data in his phone. When he walked out, everyone at the hospital also beat him down. Sang Mi exposed Dong Chun and she also claimed that he hid his phone inside. Indeed, Sang Mi now has the trust of the parish priest. Dong Chun is also taken to a secret prison cell. Here he met many people who were detained and Dong Chun also met his father. It turns out he never left for a long time but was locked up in this place. The curly-haired guy also planned with his younger brother to take away the money he hid in the foster home. Sang Mi also secretly went to Kang's room to steal her syringe. In prison, Dong Chun took out a prepared cell phone. Using the pre-installed locator, Song Hwa would find him. Early the next morning, Sang Mi changed into Song Hwa's wedding dress and, following the locator, Song Hwa arrived at Dong Chun's location to rescue him. After that, Song Hwa asked the two short friends to inform the police and take everyone out, while he and Dong Chun would go to save Sang Mi. Now Kong also knew the true face of the priest, so Kong returned the items and released Sang Mi's mother. The wedding ceremony in the new paradise was successfully completed, and Sang Mi was taken to the priest's private room. Song Hwa ran to find Sang Mi, while Dong Chun held back the sheep. At this point, Hwarong also came to help. Inside, the priest revealed his despicable and dirty ambitions. Sang Mi also tried to extract information to regain evidence of his crimes. When the priest attempted to assault Sang Mi, Song Hwa intervened. This perverted old man did not give up and attacked Song Hwa. Dong Chun and Sang Mi's mother also entered at this time. Sang Mi took out the phone with the recording, and when everyone was about to leave, the priest grabbed Sang Mi to threaten her. When the priest took Sang Mi to the prayer room, Kong was also setting fire to the place. When the priest came to stop her, Sang Mi stabbed him with the syringe. She wanted to burn this place down herself, to kill this monstrous person. Fortunately, Song Hwa arrived in time to stop her, not wanting Sang Mi to become a murderer because of him. By now, the drug had taken effect, and the priest staggered and bumped into a candle. As the candle fell to the floor, the place also caught fire. Song Hwa led Sang Mi outside, while the priest writhed in the flames. The two brothers, the curly-haired one, also returned to take the money. As they were leaving, they encountered Dong Chun, and Song Hwa arrived just in time. When Song Hwa's group was at a disadvantage, fortunately, Hwarong arrived in time with the sheep. Amidst the chaos, the curly-haired one managed to escape. At that moment, two patrol officers also passed by. The curly-haired one thought he had found an ally, but the bald officer approached and handcuffed him and his father. Then he asked the policewoman to take them to the station. Seeing the parish priest burned down, Mr. Im went crazy and Monk Kong thought that God had given her new instructions and she would reset the history of this place. Song Hwa also found her mother. Before he left, Sang Mi did not forget to thank Song Hwa for her help. Sang Mi finally saw freedom. The hell that imprisoned her has been broken and the bodies buried in the mountains have been exhumed. Song Hwa also held a press conference to expose his father's crimes. Finally, Mr. Min is about to take responsibility for all the crimes he committed. The parishioners still foolishly believe that the parish priest has gone to a new paradise. Ms. Kong is not inferior to them as she is still diligently preaching about salvation and paradise everywhere. Mr. Im also went crazy and kept looking for sheep. After all, Dong Chun and his father understood and forgave each other. Retired bald police officer and YouTube video with his son. The fat guy was also happily eating grilled meat with his brother, the shipper guy and the flower shirt guy. The day Song Hwa joined the army, his friends all came to say goodbye to him, including Sang Mi. She came to thank you and everyone. She was finally free to enjoy this life with her mother. The movie has come to an end. Everyone has the right to freedom of religion, but always be alert so that worshipping your beliefs is correct and righteous. As long as you are good, the world will smile and help you. Finally, thank you for accompanying the film. Don't forget to leave your thoughts below to let us know. Goodbye and see you again.